Imagine for a second that you had, like, a part-time job that you never actually applied for.
Oh, that sounds terrible already.
Right. A job that demands your attention every single day, pays you absolutely nothing, and actively makes you feel worse about your life. You wouldn't keep showing up.
No, you'd quit immediately. I mean, walk right out the door.
Exactly. But what if I told you that you are already working that job?
Yeah.
And you probably clocked in before you even, got out of bed today.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive. We're looking at this super fascinating personal experiment and video essay titled The Digital Fast, Reclaiming My Life from the Algorithm. And, okay, let's unpack this, because the math right at the top of this source material is genuinely staggering.
It really sets the stakes for everything else.
It totally does. The creator points out that the average person spends 3 hours every single day just scrolling.
Which, is one of those statistics that we hear so often we've kind of become numb to it. Like 3 hours just sounds like an idle evening on the couch.
Yeah, it doesn't sound that bad on paper.
Right. But when you apply the compound interest of time, it transforms from just a bad habit into a major life event.
Exactly. Because 3 hours a day becomes 21 hours a week. And that is nearly 1,000 hours a year.
Wow. 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours of your life just gone, sliding your thumb up a piece of glass.
Yeah.
I mean, you could learn a new language, write a novel, build a business.
Or honestly, just sleep more.
Seriously, just take a nap. Instead, it's sacrificed to the feed. And the creator of this video looked at that stat, looked at their own life, and realized they were completely trapped in that 1,000-hour deficit. So they did something pretty radical.
Complete cold turkey.
Yep. They deleted all of their social media apps, specifically Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Just wiped them for 30 days. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore exactly what happened to their brain, their productivity, and honestly, their soul during that month.
And what's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at a simple tech detox, or a basic conversation about screen time.
Right, it goes deeper than that.
Much deeper. This experiment is really about reclaiming your core identity from an architecture that is meticulously designed to just harvest your attention.
Oh, for sure.
We generally like to think of our phones as tools, like a hammer or a calculator. But a hammer just sits quietly in a toolbox until you need to drive a nail.
It doesn't tap you on the shoulder.
Exactly. Social media platforms do not sit quietly. They demand, they prompt, and they relentlessly pull at your neurochemistry.
And before we get into the actual visceral experience of snapping that digital supply line, we really need to establish the baseline here. Because this creator didn't just wake up one day and decide to do this for fun.
No, they were pretty much forced into it.
Yeah, by their own cognitive decline. In the video, they describe how their phone had become the very first thing they physically touched in the morning, often before even opening their eyes fully.
Which so many of us do, let's be honest. Oh, totally guilty. And it was the absolute last thing they saw at night. They were chronically exhausted, perpetually distracted, and just stuck in this toxic loop of comparing their mundane reality to everyone else's highly curated highlight reel.
Which is just the perfect psychological recipe for chronic dissatisfaction.
Okay.
But the most alarming indicator of their baseline condition wasn't just the emotional toll. It was the structural damage to their attention span.
Oh, you mean the reading test?
Yes.
This part of the source completely blew my mind. So they realized their attention span was so badly fractured that they couldn't even sit and read a physical book for 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes.
10 minutes without feeling this overwhelming, almost painful urge to check their phone for notifications.
Now, since you and our listeners are already well-versed in the digital wellness space, we all know the classic slot machine analogy. We know these companies weaponize dopamine.
But what this creator's reading test actually exposes is the physical atrophy that happens when you live inside that slot machine for a decade. It's not just that social media is highly stimulating, it's what that hyperstimulation does to your neurological baseline over time.
Right, because dopamine isn't just about pleasure, right? It's about motivation. And when you blast your brain with constant high-intensity artificial stimulation like refreshing a feed and getting a barrage of colors and likes, your brain tried to protect itself.
Precisely. It's a biological process called receptor downregulation. Your brain literally says, whoa, this is too much dopamine.
Time to turn down the volume.
Exactly. So it reduces the number of active receptors to manage the flood. And once that baseline is artificially raised, low-intensity, slow-burn stimuli simply do not register anymore.
And a printed book is a low-intensity stimulus.
Exactly. It requires sustained patient focus. When your brain is downregulated, a book physically cannot compete with the hyper-stimulating slot machine in your pocket. You don't get the chemical reward, so your brain demands you switch tasks.
It totally strips away your agency. It's not you as a person deciding that you don't enjoy reading anymore. It's your brain physically craving a specific chemical release that the book just isn't providing.
That's a great way to put it.
It really reminds me of like an atrophied muscle. Think about it like this. If you break your arm and you put it in a heavy plaster cast for 6 weeks, the cast is doing all the heavy lifting of keeping the bones stable, right?
Right.
When the doctor finally saws that cast off, your arm isn't just a little weak. The muscle is visibly withered. It literally shakes when you try to lift a coffee cup.
Oh, yeah. It takes physical therapy to get it back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for years, the algorithm has acted like a cast for our attention. It's been doing all the heavy lifting of keeping us entertained, feeding us this endless stream of content without us having to exert any real cognitive effort. So, of course, when you step outside the cast and ask that muscle to read a book for 10 uninterrupted minutes, it collapses.
That is an incredibly apt analogy. The muscle hasn't disappeared, but it is deeply, deeply out of practice. And experiencing that cognitive collapse firsthand was exactly what pushed the creator to their breaking point.
They just wanted their brain back.
Yes. They articulated this core desire that I think resonates with a lot of people. They just wanted to see who they were without an algorithm telling them what to care about.
So they delete the apps, the cast comes off. And if the algorithm has been constantly feeding your dopamine receptors for years, what physically and mentally happens when you suddenly just snap that supply line?
Well, according to the source,
It is a total nightmare.
brutal is the exact word they use.
Brutal. They explicitly call it digital withdrawal. And they describe this visceral, deeply unconscious habit of reaching for their phone during the tiniest, most microscopic gaps of boredom in their day.
We aren't talking about sitting in a waiting room for an hour.
No. We are talking about mere 30-second windows. Standing in an elevator, waiting for a barista to hand over a cup of coffee, or just sitting down on the couch before turning on the TV. In those tiny, fleeting gaps, their hand would just automatically twitch toward their pocket.
Which highlights just how automated the behavior had become. The physical twitch is bypassing conscious thought entirely. You don't decide to check your phone, your body just initiates the protocol.
It's pure muscle memory.
Exactly. And on top of that physical twitch, they documented a severe psychological toll, this intense fear of missing out. They described feeling completely untethered from society, almost as if the world was moving on without them just because they weren't witnessing it through a screen.
You know, I found myself questioning this part of the video, though.
Yeah.
Have we as a society genuinely become so terrified of our own internal monologues that we treat a 30-second elevator ride as this agonizing void that absolutely must be filled with content?
It's a fair question.
Right. Like, it's just an elevator. You're just waiting for an espresso. I really struggle to understand why that tiny moment of silence is so inherently threatening to us.
It's an excellent point to challenge, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the broader neurological expectations that have been set.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, it's not necessarily that the silence itself is threatening or scary. It's that your brain has been rigorously trained to view any idle moment not as a necessary pause, but as an opportunity for a dopamine hit.
Ah, I see.
When you suddenly withhold that hit, the brain doesn't just calmly accept the silence. It sends out an acute distress signal. And the most fascinating and honestly alarming piece of evidence for this in the source material is what happened around day 5 of the experiment.
Oh, man. You're talking about the phantom vibrations.
Exactly. For the first few days of the fast, the creator was repeatedly feeling their phone vibrate in their pocket, signaling a notification.
Except there was no notification.
No, none. The apps were entirely gone. In some cases, the phone wasn't even in their pocket. This proves how deeply ingrained the technology becomes in our actual neural pathways. The brain is literally misfiring.
That is wild to think about. Your own leg is lying to you.
It has built up such a strong Pavlovian association over the years that, in the absence of the drug, it is generating the physical sensation of a vibration just to prompt the behavioral response of checking the device. It's hallucinating a digital reward that no longer exists.
It's trying to trick the body into satisfying the addiction. But day 5 was the turning point, right? After pushing through that brutal withdrawal phase, those phantom vibrations finally stopped.
They did.
The creator says their brain it started to quiet down. The relentless static faded. Which brings up the most crucial question of the entire experiment. Once the neurological misfires stop and the phantom vibrations fade away, what rushes in to fill that massive vacuum left behind?
The answer is focus. And we aren't talking about marginal 5% improvements here. We are talking about dramatic, sweeping shifts in cognitive ability. The creator noted that by the second week, they were finishing complex tasks in just 2 hours that previously would have taken them the entire day to complete.
An entire day's worth of work in 2 hours.
Yeah.
When I read that, I almost didn't believe it. That is an insane metric. Like, how is that even physically possible?
It speaks to the mechanics of a concept known as deep work, and really the eradication of something called attention residue.
Attention residue. Okay, break that down for us.
So when you're constantly context switching, say you're writing a report, but you pause to check an email, then you look at a TikTok, then you read a news headline, and then you try to go back to the report, your brain doesn't seamlessly transition.
Right. It takes a second to catch up.
More than a second. It leaves a cognitive penalty, a residue of your attention, stuck on the previous task. Researchers have actually found it can take over 20 minutes for your brain to fully refocus after just one single interruption.
Wow. So when you're checking your phone every 10 minutes, you are existing in a permanent state of attention residue.
Precisely. You're never fully present. Your cognitive engine is constantly stalling out and having to restart. By removing those constant interruptions and the emotional roller coaster of a social media feed, the creator eliminated the attention residue.
So they weren't necessarily working faster.
Exactly. They were finally able to access sustained, unbroken concentration. They were just finally working with their entire brain.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though. The source material makes it clear that this wasn't just about becoming some, ultra-productive, hyper-efficient robot.
No, not at all.
There was a much more profound personal awakening happening alongside the productivity. Without the constant deafening noise of thousands of other people's opinions screaming at them from a feed, the creator could finally hear their own voice again.
That clarity is huge.
Yeah. They describe achieving a level of mental clarity they literally hadn't felt since childhood. And they started noticing the physical world again, like the actual colors of their neighborhood, the ambient sounds of their environment, the facial expressions of the people right in front of them.
The juxtaposition there is striking. If you think back to their baseline condition.
The highlight reel.
Yes. They were living in a constant state of comparison, measuring their self-worth against digital highlight reels. Their entire reality was mediated through a screen. But by week 3, the reward isn't a digital like from a stranger. The reward is the vibrant, unfiltered reality of the physical world.
I kept picturing it like this. Consuming social media all day is like trying to drive a car down the highway through a massive torrential storm of mud and rain.
Okay, I like this.
Your windshield is just caked in grime. You're squinting, you're stressed out, your grip on the steering wheel is white-knuckled, and you can only vaguely make out the blurry shapes of the cars ahead of you.
You're surviving the drive, but you aren't really seeing the road.
Exactly. The second and third week of this fast, that's the moment someone finally reaches over and turns on the windshield wipers.
Right.
The mud suddenly clears. The relief is instantaneous. Suddenly you can see the exact vibrant color of the trees, the sharpness of the road lines, the actual landscape you're navigating. The beautiful landscape was always there. You just had a thick layer of algorithmic mud blocking your view.
And having that cleared windshield allows us to completely reevaluate what we previously accepted as normal. When we look at that massive spike in productivity, doing 8 hours of work in 2 hours, it makes total sense through your analogy.
Just seeing clearly.
Right. True productivity is born from presence of mind. Our mental bandwidth is finite. When it isn't being constantly drained by background algorithmic processing.
Like worrying about a controversial comment.
Yes, or remembering an outrage-inducing post, or anticipating the next notification. All that reclaimed energy can be directed precisely where you want it to go.
So that brings us to the final stretch of the 30 days, week 4. The childhood level clarity has been fully restored. The windshield is totally clean. Looking through that clean glass, how does the creator view all that content they used to consume so obsessively?
With a massive sense of disillusionment, honestly. By the final week, the source notes that the compulsive urge to scroll had completely vanished.
It's amazing how quickly the neurochemistry can reset once you get over that initial hump.
It really is. And the urge was replaced by a rather blunt epiphany. 90% of what they had been consuming on those platforms was absolute junk.
90%.
Yeah. It wasn't serving any actual tangible purpose.
It didn't make them smarter, it didn't make them richer, and it certainly wasn't making them happier. It was just empty calories for the brain. But what did make them happier were the very real, tangible life improvements that materialized seemingly out of nowhere during this month.
The list is pretty impressive.
It is.
Ah.
Their sleep dramatically improved. Which makes sense, considering they weren't staring at a glowing rectangle of existential dread right up until the moment they closed their eyes.
That definitely helps.
Their anxiety levels plummeted. They were finally present in their real-life relationships instead of being, physically in the room but mentally on the internet. They fixed their daily routine. And, maybe the most tangible result of all, they actually found a new job.
Which is incredible.
Why? Because they finally had the time and the sustained focus to actually go look for one.
And that transformation raises a critical question when we reach the conclusion of their experiment. The 30 days are up. The fast is officially over. Do they go back to the platforms?
Right. I was reading the conclusion of this experiment, and given everything we just talked about, the withdrawal, the clarity, the new job, I fully expected them to throw their phone in the ocean and move to the woods.
That would be the dramatic ending.
But they didn't. They actually reinstalled the apps, which honestly shocked me at first. But they did it with a massive caveat. They decided to return to social media not as a consumer, but as a creator.
A very important distinction.
They vowed to use the phone strictly as a tool for output, rather than letting it be their master for input. And they end the video by issuing a direct challenge to you, the viewer. Delete the apps for 7 days or 30 days if you're brave, and find the person underneath the screen.
It's a powerful challenge.
It is. But I have to admit, I am highly skeptical here. Is this creator versus consumer mindset actually a realistic boundary for the average person to maintain, or is it just a slippery slope right back into the algorithm's trap?
It's definitely a risk.
It feels a bit like an alcoholic saying, I'm going to go back to the bar, but only to serve drinks, not to drink them. The environment itself is the trigger,
It is an incredibly delicate tightrope to walk, and your skepticism is entirely justified. We cannot pretend the platforms have changed. This raises an important question about architecture. The algorithms do not care if you personally identify as a creator or a consumer. Their underlying design remains ruthlessly focused on capturing and holding your attention. However, what the creator is attempting to establish here is a rigorous framework of intentionality.
Intentionality, okay.
Think about it. As a consumer, you are completely passive. The feed happens to you. You open the app with no goal other than to be entertained.
You just want to zone out.
Exactly. As a creator, or at least someone operating with a creator's utility-driven mindset, you log on with a specific objective. To post a video, to send a message, to check a specific group, you execute that objective and you log off.
But the gravitational pull of that feed is so strong. You open it to post a video, and suddenly a wildly entertaining clip autoplays, and boom, 30 minutes are gone.
It is strong, yes.
Yeah.
But let's look at the psychological armor this creator has built up over the past 30 days to resist that gravity.
Okay, fair point.
Connect their improved sleep, their reduced anxiety, and their new job directly back to the very first statistic we discussed today, the 1,000 hours.
The 1,000 hours a year.
Right, but this is the profound realization of week 4. Those 1,000 hours weren't magically granted to them by the universe during the fast. That time was always there. It was just being systematically harvested by the apps.
Wow.
Once you step outside the matrix and experience the tangible, life-altering benefits of hoarding your own time, landing a job, sleeping peacefully, feeling genuinely connected to your loved ones, the appeal of the junk content loses its hypnotic power.
Because you know what you're trading for it.
Exactly. The boundary might be fragile, but the absolute clarity they gained provides a powerful experiential counterbalance. They know what it costs to scroll now.
They've seen the clean windshield, and they know exactly how bad the mud was. So let's take a step back and look at the whole journey. We started with a person whose attention span was so fractured they couldn't endure 10 minutes of a printed book.
A completely downregulated baseline.
Yep. They were a hostage to phantom vibrations, their hand unconsciously twitching for their phone every time an elevator door closed. And through the brutal, deeply uncomfortable process of digital withdrawal, they broke the algorithms cast off their brain.
They did.
They reclaimed their cognitive bandwidth, unlocking the ability to do a full day's deep work in just 2 hours because they eliminated the attention residue. They cleared the mud off the windshield, recognized the infinite feed for the junk it was, and fundamentally shifted their relationship with technology from being a mindless consumer to an intentional creator.
It's a profound shift.
The creator's final advice to anyone watching was incredibly simple and direct. put your phone down and go live.
And that leaves us with a critical, maybe somewhat uncomfortable perspective to consider as we wrap up today.
Oh, I'm ready for it. What is it?
We spend a lot of time in these discussions talking about the pragmatic, measurable benefits of a digital fast, reclaiming our hours, boosting our productivity, finding a better job, improving our sleep. Those are all vital, tangible wins. But perhaps we are overlooking the deeper psychological mechanism at play here. What if the ultimate success of the algorithm isn't simply that it steals our time or sells our attention to advertisers? What if its true insidious power lies in how perfectly it preys upon our deep-seated, entirely human fear of sitting alone in silence?
Wow. The idea that we are entirely complicit because we're actively running away from our own quiet minds.
Precisely. The phone is the ultimate escape hatch from ourselves. We use it to drown out our own thoughts, our anxieties, our unresolved questions. So perhaps the real underlying challenge of a digital fast isn't just about surviving the physical withdrawal of social media.
It's not just the phantom vibrations.
Right. It isn't just about resisting the urge to scroll or becoming a hyper-productive worker. The true challenge is having the courage to finally meet the unfiltered, unedited version of yourself that has been buried underneath that glowing screen for years.
You have to take off the cast. You have to let the atrophied muscle ache a little bit. You sit in the quiet. And instead of reaching for a highly curated highlight reel of someone else's life to numb the boredom, you actually have to start living your own. We'll leave you with that to